Hello YouTube. Hey, it's Dave here with another Watch Love video. This time taking a look at the Hamilton Jazzmaster Viewmatic, reference number H32665131. So this is my second attempt to try to add a Hamilton to my collection. So the very first was the Hamilton Jazzmaster chronograph, which I've reviewed here on this channel. And I absolutely love that piece, but after only a week, the movement locked up. I mean, it was a fairly old watch when I bought it. And so I was able to return it to the eBay seller for a refund. But ever since then, I have been searching eBay for another low-priced, pre-owned Hamilton, which hopefully will hold up and stay in better shape. So that's when I came upon this reference and found it on eBay for an excellent price. So this review is going to take shape around three parts. First, why I love Hamilton as a brand. Second, why this particular reference fits well in my collection. And third, a look at the watch itself. So first, why I love Hamilton as a brand. Before Hamilton became part of the Swatch Group in 1973 and moved to Switzerland, Hamilton was an American watch company, and it was established right down the road from where I live in 1892 here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So this has been a piece that I've always wanted to have in my collection due to the fact that this great historic brand is close by. So Lancaster became the home of Hamilton for all those years. Hamilton was really known for their timepieces for the railroads to make that accurate for the railroads to run on time and to run safely. Then, of course, Hamilton was a supplier for the U.S. Armed Forces, and in World War II halted the production of their consumer watches to be able to then provide over 1 million pieces to the U.S. Armed Forces. So Hamilton has a real connection to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where I live. But also in Lancaster, there are some other features of Lancaster that really are friendly for us watch lovers. There's the National Watch and Clock Museum in nearby Columbia, Pennsylvania. That's also operated by the National Association of Watch and Clock Collectors, which is a fabulous group of people. And then, of course, in Lidditz, Pennsylvania, there's a school of Swiss watchmaking, originally established by Rolex to help address the shortage of high-quality watchmakers after so many people stopped watchmaking after the quartz crisis. But then as mechanical watches built back up, there was a shortage. So they started that school here in Lidditz, Pennsylvania, which is right outside of Lancaster. And then finally, this area is also the home of the RGM Watch Company, one of the finest American watchmakers, and happened to be right down the road here in Mount Joy, Pennsylvania. I really recommend that you look them up and become very familiar with the quality and the products that they offer. If you're looking for a high-end American watch, that's the company to go with. There's also something very interesting about Hamilton as well, a great story about how they got their name. Hamilton was named after Andrew Hamilton. So he was a colonial lawyer in the early 1700s of colonial America. So this lawyer, he was a lawyer in Philadelphia. And he went on to New York City to defend a New York City paper accused of libel for writing about the corruption of a group of local judges in New York. And so Hamilton eloquently defended the case and got a not guilty verdict, arguing that telling the truth should never be grounds for libel. And so he was building the foundation for us here in America in our First Amendment that includes the freedom of the press, that you should be able to write the truth about powers that be. And so he was a very big shaper of the early colonial America. And then later he was among a group of folks who founded Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So in 1892, when this new watch company was about to establish its brand, it chose to name their watch company after Andrew Hamilton, becoming the Hamilton Watch Company. Now, of course, Andrew Hamilton is no relation to Alexander Hamilton, so don't be confused there. But I will tell you that if you enjoy this piece of history, one collection you should check out is the Spirit of Liberty collection that Hamilton has. There are some beautiful pieces that they have, including the famous quote, "Without liberty, life is a misery." And this was a quote from Andrew Hamilton. So it's a great brand, great history, and a beautiful collection that Hamilton has built over time, and definitely something I want in my watch collection. Second, where does this watch fit in my collection? So I've developed an affinity for what I call the dress casual watch. I started out in my watch evolution as a lover of the sports watch. I have a number of dive watches and always will. But I liked something a little more appropriate for work, and that really led me to the dress casual watch. Recently, I purchased the Cocktail Time, but then it was shortly after that I was able to pick up the Aqua Terra. And with both of those being a blue dial, the Cocktail Time became a rather redundant piece, so I ended up selling that. But I wanted to add still something that's like the Cocktail Time, but not in blue, and that led me in search of a black dial. So while, again, searching for a black dial dress casual watch, also thinking about Hamilton, that's when I discovered this. And this reminds me a lot of the SDGM 003, which again is no longer being produced and is now climbing in price on the used market, and too high of a price for me to purchase right now. So this Hamilton really is close to that. So this really scratches a couple of itches for me. It has the black dial, has the sunburst effect, and it also has those Art Deco hour markers like you see on the Cocktail Time. So this really is a black dial Hamilton version, so to speak, of what I liked about the Cocktail Time. And now let's finally take a look at the watch. So let's start with some general specifications. This is a 40 millimeter case across the width, not including the crown. It is 20 millimeter lug width and a lug-to-lug of 49.5 millimeters. Interestingly, this is a slightly smaller case than my Aqua Terra, but my Aqua Terra has quite a bit of shorter lug-to-lug. So this does extend quite a bit along the wrist, even though it is only a 40 millimeter case. Now, taking a look at the bracelet is probably one of the best features, so let me start with that. This is one of Hamilton's best-looking bracelets. It has brushed center links and polished outer links, so this is quite different from a number of other standard bracelets that have this design and this look. So that's pretty cool. I think it gives a little difference to the usual typical bracelet. It comes with a butterfly clasp with a double push-button deployant. And this clasp is really good solid steel, very similar to the quality of my Aqua Terra. Both sides snap in very nicely. There are half links for sizing, so I was able to size this pretty well on my 7¼ inch wrist. This has a pin and collar fastening system, which I know can be annoying, but it works very well once you get the links together. So just to compare this bracelet again, I think it's really close in quality to my Aqua Terra, which is of course a much more expensive piece, but it is far better than the Seiko Cocktail Time, which is very thin and very lightweight. So again, if you're looking at spending the kind of money that you would get for something like the Cocktail Time for just a little bit more, you can get a Hamilton that really does reflect more of a higher end quality in something like the bracelet. In fact, I would say that one of the things I love about this bracelet is that it's so different than the other Hamilton bracelet that you see on the Jazzmaster that have those H-shaped links, for Hamilton. Those links are a bit blingy, so I'm not a big fan of those. It was on my Jazzmaster chronograph, but I think this looks significantly better. Now, taking a look at the case, I really love Hamilton's case designs. One thing that's really drawn me to Omega are their cases, and I think one thing that draws me to Hamilton are theirs. It's a uniquely Hamilton look. You see this a lot on the Jazzmasters. The extension of the crown guard, there's that extended section on the 3 o'clock side that acts as a crown guard for the crown. On the lugs, you have brushed on top, brushed on the sides with this polished 45-degree angle, a lot like some of the higher-end Seikos. And then on the 9 o'clock side, you have a nice recessed, polished section that really does generate a little bit of interest on the side of the case that's usually pretty unnoticeable. And then on the back, you have a sapphire case back with 5 screws securing the case back to the case. You have a well-informative print going around the case back. That's all well done. And then on the front, you have sapphire crystal with no anti-reflective coating that I can tell, which is somewhat of a weakness of this watch. But on the other hand, as I noticed with my Tissot Aviso-Date, which had no anti-reflective coating, really the bracelet and the crystal together just reflect a lot of light. So even though this is a very dressy kind of subtle design, it really is going to catch a lot of light, which I think makes it a little more interesting. Now let's move to the dial. The dial has a lot of space on it because you have a very small, very minimalist bezel here. Unlike the Aqua Terra or the Datejust, you have just very minimal bezel going around the outside of the dial. So the dial here is black, but even though it looks black in so many pictures, it's really not that deep of a black. In fact, in an average light, it's really a very dark gray with a slight tint towards a brownish coppery tone, especially when it hits the light. But this watch dial does include a beautiful sunburst effect, though it is much, much more subtle than the Cocktail Time or the Aqua Terra. As the light strikes the dial and that sunburst effect comes alive, it kind of gives the dial this coppery tone, and I think you can kind of see that, especially in the sunlight. Now, the dial also features Dauphine hands, which is a favorite of mine for a dressier looking watch. And the hands are long. They reach all the way to the ends of the markers, which I think is really important. You compare that to the Orient Bambino, which has a lot of stubby hands. That's one thing that has kept me away from the Bambino and drawn me more towards watches like this. And of course, one of my favorite features of this watch are the Art Deco hour markers like you see on the Cocktail Time. And at least Art Deco is what I call them, because they have that kind of look about them. But the lume at night is very minimal. Really, it only lasts on the hands, and even then, it barely lasts till morning. The chapter markers and the lume on the chapter markers pretty much fades very quickly and does not hold through the night. So lume has always been an issue on these particular watches, which is unfortunate because I really love good lume. Now, the text on the dial really is perfect. I love the Hamilton logo. Viewmatic, I think, is a great word to have on this dial because some of these versions, the larger versions, have the word automatic. I much prefer Viewmatic there. And of course, after looking at the Cocktail Time and the Presage capital text across there, I think it's nice to finally have a watch that seems to have appropriate text on the dial. Now, the date window is probably the most controversial feature of this watch because you have black text on a white background. Why didn't they put white text on a black background? But anybody that's seen any of my videos knows I love a date window, so I don't mind a date window that really jumps out. And then another thing to note about the dial is the seconds track that runs along the outside of the dial. It's admittedly very busy. Someone commented on the Cocktail Time that was the failure of the Cocktail Time. All these marks around the dial. Yes, I admit it's busy, but this busyness kind of moves this away from dress to more of a casual watch. But there's a lot of information here. You not only have the hashes, but you have the dots. But I don't think it's too much when you see it in real life. What I do appreciate is the spacing on each side of the chapter markers, that those little micro hashes don't go all the way to the chapter markers. So there's a little gap there that kind of creates a visual breakup, which I do appreciate. Lastly, let's take a look at the movement. So this movement is ETA 2824-2. This is not the newer version, the H10 that Hamilton has created. This is the older version, which is a 4 Hertz, 28,800 beats per second, higher beat rate, but with only a 38 to 40 hour power reserve. This does feature hacking and hand winding, though I've noticed in this when I pull the crown out to set the watch, there's a lot of play when you turn the crown, not play in the crown itself, but just in the degree to which it will turn before it starts engaging the hands. But I haven't noticed that to be a problem. And note that this is different, this 2824, than the modified H10 Hamilton movement that now has the 80-hour power reserve. That's based on a 2824, but they've made some changes to it to give it that longer power reserve. They've reduced the beat rate on it. And if you're interested in the difference between those two movements, take a look at Bruce Williams. He has a great side-by-side comparison between these movements, and I'll try to remember to put a link to that video in my description. So lastly, let's just talk about the overall feel and design of this watch. First of all, it is simple, but elegant and classy. It's busy enough to keep my interest, but it's simple enough to work for dressier situations. I love the elegance of this watch. And the thing is, it's not going to be noticed by people who walk by. This is not going to grab people's attention. But for the wearer, for you that are living with this watch day by day, you're going to notice little pieces of the elegance of this watch over time that just really grab you and make you fall in love with it more and more each day. It's not a big attention-getting watch, but it is one that you really will come to appreciate. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. Appreciate you giving me a like, and we'll see you down the road.